Yep, this is how I plan to win my Oscar for this. Hollywood, here I come. Okay, so last time we were looking at some of the background for the modern era, and we looked at the some of the major changes, and one of the big changes, historically speaking, was the transition from a geocentric view of reality to a heliocentric. And we saw, the impact of Copernicus and Galileo switching off there. Now we'll turn to some of the implications of the new science. If I don't trip over the chair and kill myself. Okay, so we saw last time one implication of the new science is the metaphysical view. Galileo Galilei, he hit on the idea of it being matter in motion governed by matter. So we see a rise of what we recognize now as modern physics. Now philosophically, there are some important stuff coming out of Galileo. First, and these are things that will run throughout the course of the course, so they'll infest it all the way through. Although infest sounds kind of unpleasant. But yeah, we'll go with infest. That sounds cool. First thing will be what are known as the qualities. Now, give a little background for it. One view of reality is what's called naive realism. It's a view that what you see is what you get. To illustrate it, the idea is that, to give one concrete illustration, that color is out there. Things really do have color. You're seeing color. That the taste is, and flavor and so forth is out there. That warm and cool are out there. The one way to put it in terms of bumper sticker is, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And it's called naive realism because, well, the real part is because the idea is that all you experience is real. It's all really out there for real. And naive because it's how we think about the world before we've really thought about it a lot. If you ask, say you ask like a 3-year-old, and you say, where's the red? And of course they'll point to that. But if you ask some of the sciences, where's the red, where will they point? Red's in your head. Which leads us to this part. And here's the idea. Galileo was one of the first to lay out this distinction. And here's the distinction between primary and secondary. Primary qualities are qualities, well, sort of informally put, they're the real qualities that are really out there. And for Galileo, they include what we think of as the physical qualities. Things like size, volume, density, mass, location. And these are qualities that are really in the objects, what is really out there for real. Now you might say, well, isn't color really out there for real? Isn't taste really out there for real? Isn't warmth and cold really out there for real? And Galileo would say, well, he wouldn't say anything now because he's really dead and stuff. But back when he wasn't dead, he would say no. Oh, he wouldn't say no. Oh, he'd say no. He'd say no because he's like Italian and stuff. And that's the extent of my Italian. Well, I can say spaghetti, that's Italian, right? Lasagna, fettuccine, Rome. That's it. That's all the Italian I know. Liberal arts education, wasted. Now, so the primary qualities are qualities that are really out there for real. These are the qualities we would think of as being part of physics. The secondary qualities are the effects in us produced by the primary qualities. It's how our brain or mind, depending on how you look at it, interacts with the primary qualities. So primary qualities are primary because they're really out there for real. Well, you can take the example of a bowl of cereal. It really does have the mass, the density, volume, really real for real. But the secondary qualities are the effects it produces in us. The taste, for example, whether the cereal is warm or cool, that's in our mind. So secondary qualities are effects produced in us by the primary qualities. So what would be examples of secondary qualities? Well, one would be color. According to contemporary theory, which arose from Galileo, color is not out in the world. There is no blue. There is no red. What's out there, at least if science is right, is certain objects, and photons of light hit them, bounce off, strike our eye or our retina, and then our mind, our brain does whatever it does, and we have an experience of color. Color is in our mind. How do we know that? Well, we'll see more of the arguments later, but the basic idea is this. Everyone's probably heard of color blindness. If you're colorblind, what happens?
You can't, everything's like gray, like black and white.
Yeah, certain colors you can't tell apart, like all like dark blue, dark green, dark brown, all look alike. And when you've gone, to get your license, the test, they have that, they make you look at the funny, multicolor thing to look at it, see if you can tell what number or letter is there. They're testing you for color blindness, which is important because the stoplights are red, green, and you kind of got to know, which one you're seeing. And so we know color blind, color is in the mind, because some people see colors and some people don't. And of course, things like dogs, for example, and cats have different sorts of vision. We can also use the example of warmth and coolness. Temperature is a primary quality. That's really out there for real. It's molecular motion. But whether something feels warm or cool, how we experience it is in your mind. The thermometer tells us the temperature, but your response to it, like today, it was 28 degrees this morning, 5 a.m. I know that because it's up running in. Now to me, I'm from Maine, so 28 degrees is cool. I'll give that it's cold. Okay, it's below freezing, so I'll reluctantly accept cold. But once it hits 50, to me that's cool, and 65 is warm, and then 70 is hot, and then it just goes hot. And that's it. That's my breakdown: is hot, not hot, and cold. Yeah. And so how the secondary qualities of warmth or cold is in the mind. Final example. If you have, go with the example of the bowl of cereal, the cereal does have primary qualities: shape, chemical composition, etc. But the taste is in your mind. You literally taste things with your mind. How so? Well, you eat the cereal, and your taste buds, react to the chemicals, send a signal to your brain, and that is where the taste takes place. That's why, to different people, food tastes differently, because you're tasting with your brain. So, you can use the sort of analogy to temperature. Some people really like hot and spicy foods. Some people don't, because it tastes different to them. And so the primary qualities are qualities that are really real for real. The secondary qualities are qualities we experience. Now, why is this important? Well, many reasons, but here are two. One is this provides a foundation for objective science, what's really real for real, and it also tells us what is subjective to the individual, what it is dependent on the individual person. Secondly, this distinction helps fuel a major problem in philosophy, also in Hollywood, which is the problem of the external world. How do we know what we're experiencing is really real for real? If you see movies like The Matrix or Inception, the question is, like Inception, how do you know whether you're dreaming or not? How do you know this is real and not just a nightmare? Of course, it could be a real nightmare. It could be both. Why not both? Now, once you have primary and secondary qualities, what could happen is you could experience all the secondary qualities, let's call this virtual reality, without the primary qualities being there. So it could be not real, it could be all in your mind. And to use like a Hollywood example, think of the Oculus, Rift, and a couple of Google's weirdly named Cardboard, which profess to offer you virtual reality. It's not really virtual reality because it's just what you see, so it's kind of visual virtual reality. And so what it tries to do is the virtual reality doesn't have the primary qualities. You know, if you're in a virtual world, it's not really real for real, but it tries to give us these secondary qualities. And so in a way, this is what makes virtual reality like possible. It gives you the experience without the reality. But then it also creates a problem. How do you know you're not in the matrix? How do you know there's really something behind what you experience? That you're really in a room with people and not just plugged into a computer or dreaming or hallucinating. So that's kind of first main contribution. Before moving on, anything about primary or secondary that needs more stuff? Now, another major change is this. If we go back to the ancient days of Aristotle, and little less ancient in medieval times, there were what were called teleological explanations. The good question is, what? So here's the idea. An illustration of this, and to sort of present an illustration that is, well, kind of contemporary. Here's how you can think of the difference between teleological and mechanical. And probably the best illustration, today would be this. Everyone's kind of has heard of the creationism versus evolution debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, creationism says what? Where did everything come from? Yeah, God literally creates it. Now that's a teleological view. Teleological is from the Greek, telos, which means goal or end. Put kind of informally, a teleological explanation is one that involves reference to a purpose or a goal. It doesn't necessarily require there to be an intelligent cause behind it, but it typically involves that. Aristotle, for example, had the view that all things act towards an end, that it's a purposeful universe. Once you bring in religion, that's also teleological, that the God or the gods make that happen. Now, if a person who's a teleologist, drove a car, which they often do, their bumper sticker would say, everything happens for a reason. There's a purpose behind things. And so creationism today is a prime example of a teleological view. The universe is created and run by, well, the monotheist, God. Someone's driving the bus and creating the bus. Now, an opposing viewpoint is the mechanical explanations, which they involve explaining things without a purpose or meaning behind them. So if a person who rejects teleological explanations drove a car, they'd probably, I assume they'd drive a Tesla. They'd a lot of money. Just stereotyping that. Their bumper sticker would say, not everything happens for a reason. It would just say stuff happens. No purpose or meaning behind it. And so the theory of evolution, well, if a person believes just in evolution, who's running evolution? Who's in charge? Who's throwing the levers? The answer is nobody. No one's driving the bus. The bus is just luckily getting where it's going. Yeah, so the theory of evolution, the version that doesn't involve God, is just natural selection, purely mechanical. So one of the big changes during this time period was abandoning teleological explanations. So, for example, for Aristotle, if you asked Aristotle, why do things fall? And the answer would be, well, it's the nature of things to fall. They wish to get closer to the Mother Earth. If you were to ask during the Middle Ages, why does it rain? The answer would be, God has chosen to make it rain. Now, once you get to mechanical explanations, the explanation is not that God does it. It'd be explained in terms of, say, physics or chemistry. Why does it rain? Well, you'd give the standard, explanation in basic science. That you have the water in the clouds, it reaches a certain saturation point, then gravity, blah, 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 and the rain falls, or magic. So this is a major change. You go from a purposeful universe, typically run by God, to one that is explained mechanically. Why is this still important? Well, have we settled this debate? No, right, I mean, right now, literally right now, people are still having this contention. Whether to teach, creationism as an explanation in science classes, or just evolution. If you talk to most scientists, they say this and this is not. You talk to some religious folks, they say not this, this. Although some religious folks, such as the Vatican, their view is both of these. There's no verses. And their view is God uses evolution to do the stuff. So, one of the issues that began long ago, still going on today, is that debate. Which bumper sticker goes on the car? Everything happens for a reason, or stuff happens. And a fundamental question about the universe, in terms of how it works. Is someone driving the bus, or is the bus not being driven and we're just heading off a cliff with no one running the show? Stay tuned to find out. And will Batman show up to save us before it goes off the cliff? Now, a closely related thing is this. Our good dead friend Aristotle developed multiple notions of causes. And one of them is what translates into English as final cause. Now, in a way, it's not a great choice for the name, because we think of final cause as like final showdown, or final countdown, the last one. By this, Aristotle means something different. What he means is the final cause of something is the reason or purpose for which it exists. Now, in some cases, excuse me, now the pixel death. Put that on my tombstone if I don't make it. Killed by pixel. January 12th, 2016. Now, the final cause means this. Again, it's the end or purpose for which something exists. Now, in some cases, this is non-controversial. For example, if we take like the mouse, the final cause of the mouse, the reason why it exists is in order to control the computer. We designed it, or not us individually, but people designed it, and that's what it does. Now, if we accept that there's a final cause for natural things, that's the view that these things exist for an end or purpose or reason. So, for example, the world would exist for a reason, have a purpose or goal. As people, we'd have a purpose or goal. Trees would have a purpose or a goal. Now, for those who believe in a teleological universe, there are final causes. Why do the seasons change? Well, it'd be explained in terms of purposes. Why do birds fly? It'd be explained in terms of purposes. Now, people also, during the medieval period, brought in God. Again, like why does it rain? God made it happen. Why does the earth have a particular temperature and gravity? God made that happen. Now, as mechanical explanations come into play, people, the scientists, stop using final causes. So you wouldn't say, this is so because God. It'd be explained in terms of mechanical stuff. And again, this is a huge change. So we see here the rise of the distinction between science-based explanations and religious-based. And this is not something that's over. Still, to this day, there is that contention. Right here in the United States, one of the leading scientific capitals of the world, we have that debate. Is the scientific explanation correct, or is the religious explanation? Faith and reason kind of clashing. Before pressing on to our next slide, anything about that needs more stuff? Now, In terms of philosophy stuff, here are a couple of important things. This will explain the dead guys we're looking at. Now, at the start of the modern era, there were people, of course, did science and philosophy and so on. But what had happened is, as so often does, philosophy had become sort of dogmatic and ossified. Scholasticism was kind of the order of the day, and the way people would typically learn philosophy is they just go and they would learn what Aristotle said, and they would learn what the church said, and they would just sort of repeat by rote what was said. And the hallmark of this revolution was two things. First, as we'll see when we look at the various dead guys, Hobbes, Locke, Descartes, they wanted to sweep away the past. Because their view was not that nothing had been accomplished, but their view was that everything was kind of a mess. That we hadn't answered any questions with certainty and definitiveness. So sort of objective one, sweep away the past. Now, if you're going to like sweep away something, or if your goal is just to destroy it, that's well and good, but you kind of have to offer something in return. I mean, to use a political analogy, if someone proposes to like sweep away Obamacare, that's well and good, but you also have to say, what are we going to do in its place? Maybe nothing, or maybe something. This is kind of a similar deal. They're going to sweep away the past, which they regard as flawed. The second thing is this. There was a dream, a vision, of a perfect philosophical method. And so they wanted to find the method that would guarantee certainty. So what are the hopes, the dreams? Perhaps a delusion of this time was that quest, the quest for the perfect method. And what this method is supposed to do is this. It is supposed to enable you to find truth. And then you could use this method to build more truths and to have absolute certainty, to solve the mysteries to life, the universe, and everything with absolute certainty. So how did that work out? Did we solve all the problems? Come up with all the answers? All the questions? The answer is yes, we did. There is a book. If you get a PhD in philosophy, you get to see the book. And the book has all the answers to all the questions in it. Now what you're thinking, of course, is that's total BS. There is no such book. Which is the perfect defense for the book. By saying there is such a book, everyone says there is no such book. So the book is perfectly defended, because no one would believe that the book exists. So, yes, but no one believes it. True? Yeah, not true. Perfect defense. Anyways, next, next thing. And I must say the answers are kind of disappointing, so you're not missing out on anything. Meaning of life, chocolate, and Netflix. Yeah, so people didn't know what it was before, but we finally figured out what it was. Like, yeah, that's pretty disappointing. Which is why alcohol, I think, is the third. So you don't feel so bad about the Netflix and the chocolate. But anyways, so what are these two things? Well, in this quest for the perfect method, philosophy has divided into two main camps. These camps actually go back to the beginning. Now, much like in American politics, we now have, of course, Republicans and Democrats battling it out. And philosophy has two main camps as well. Now, of course, there are alternatives. Just like in the US, we have independents and so forth. But there are two main schools. And this will run throughout the course of the course. Every dead person we look at falls either into this group or this group. And what divides them is this. The question is, how do you know about the world? And that's the core question. Now, the people who are rationalists, what defines them is, well, here's their main defining thing. You might be a rationalist if you believe that you can know what is real, what is out there, by pure reason. Rationalists also tend to accept what are called innate ideas. We'll see this in Descartes and Leibniz, etc. What's an innate idea? Well, the idea is this. Here's the mind. Well, it looks kind of like a mitten, I suppose. But the idea is, if you believe in innate ideas, you believe the mind is pre-stocked with concepts. Hence, their ideas, and they're built in. I'll use a crappy analogy to illustrate it. Now these days, if you buy a phone, is the phone just like empty? Like when you turn it on, there's like nothing in it? No, it's got an operating system. It's already got some, if you buy an Apple phone, you get all these apps in there. Buy an Android phone, there are apps in there. And the mind is like that, in that sense, that just like you get a phone, you have all this software preloaded that you don't add yourself. If you believe in ideas, there's stuff built into the mind, already in there. What are those things? Well, it depends on who you ask. Some may think that ideas of God are in there. Some might claim there's ideas of mathematics, or ethics, or Netflix, maybe. So the two hallmarks of rationalism are this. If you're a rationalist, you believe we can have what's called a priori knowledge about the world. A priori means prior to experience. So you can know stuff about what's real by pure reason. Now, what would be an example of something that's a priori? Well, first I'll use an easy and obvious example, and then I'll use a more complicated one. Okay, I've drawn a triangle on the board. How many sides does it have? How did you know? Yeah, because by definition, you don't have to look. If I'm telling the truth, there's a triangle, you know a priori before looking that it has 3 sides, because by definition, triangles have 3 sides. Likewise, if someone says they're a bachelor, that means that they are an unmarried man, by definition. Now, of course, they could be lying about that, but you do know if someone is a bachelor, if that's true, you know they're a man and they're unmarried, by definition. So, some a priori knowledge is knowledge that is essentially by definition. Triangles have 3 sides, you don't have to look to know. Now, what I said, what separates the rationalist from the empiricist is the rationalist believes you can know what's really real, what's out there, by pure reason. You don't have to look. You get to be sitting in your armchair thinking and know what's out there. Now, one simple example of it is this. There's an argument, which goes way back, at least back to our good dead friend, St. Anselm, called the Ontological Argument. And the simple version goes like this. God exists. How do we prove this? Well, God is perfect, so he has to exist. Because if he didn't exist, he wouldn't be perfect. But he is perfect, so he must exist. So by pure reason, I've proven that God exists. Don't have to look. By thinking about it, I've proven it. Or so St. Anselm claimed. And of course, there are people who say that's BS. So the hallmarks of rationalism is a belief that you can prove there's stuff out there for real by pure reason. Now, why would this be important today? Well, one of the debates that's going on, obviously in philosophy, but also in science, is can you, by like pure theory, pure mathematics, prove the existence of things without having to get empirical evidence? In rationalism's view, yeah. And there are some physicists today who believe you can do that. You can do, equations in mathematics and prove that things exist, which is old hat for philosophy, because we've been doing this for a long time. So if you believe you can prove the existence of things by pure reason, you're a rationalist. Now the opposing camp are called empiricists. And they believe that whatever you know about what's out there comes from out there through the senses and gets in here. So all knowledge is a posteriori, from which we get our term posterior. It means after experience. So all that we know comes from experience. You can't just do it with pure reason, in terms of like the world. Now you can be an empiricist and believe you can know things by pure reason. So an empiricist, would say, yeah, triangles always have three sides, bachelors are always unmarried, but the key debate is whether you can know about the world, what's out there, by pure reason or by experience. And the rationalists say, pure reason lets you know about at least some things about the world. And the empiricists say, that is BS. You have to go and use empirical methods. Now, the rationalists typically buy innate ideas. The empiricists reject that. In a famous description, this, John Locke talks about a tabula rasa, or blank slate. And that is, for the rationalist, the mind has got all this stuff built into it. Again, going with the analogy of the phone, your phone's got all kinds of stuff in there right from the factory. For the rationalist, you're born with these ideas already in there. For the empiricist, the mind is empty. And everything that's in there has to come from out here through the senses. The analogy I often use is, it's like being in a room, and you're sitting in the room, nothing else is in there. And then Lego blocks are thrown in from the outside, essentially. So stuff supposedly comes from the outside. So the mind is a blank slate, unstopped. Now this, of course, goes beyond just philosophy, because there's the interesting philosophical question. Are we born with built-in stuff, like concepts of mathematics, say beauty, racism, sexism, is that stuff built in? Or do we have to acquire that? Now, rationalists say that we have some stuff built in. And of course, a rationalist can accept we learn some stuff. But the empiricist says we learn everything. Nothing is built in. There's nothing in there. To use an analogy, you might have heard ancient people like myself talking about the day when you can buy a computer with nothing in it. Or you can do it yourself. You can take your hard drive, your computer, and erase that. Or if you ever had a hard drive fail, that's like a blank slate. Because back in the day, when I was your age, computers, there were no hard drives. There was no internet. There were no mobile phones. There was no Netflix. Dinosaurs roamed the earth. It was terrifying. Now, back then when you got a computer, there was literally, you booted up like a Commodore 64, there was nothing. You just had like a little cursor. And if you wanted to do anything, you had to load in, you had to write your own software, or load in software. And so it's kind of a tabula rasa thing. This is like blank hard drive. You want it to do anything, you got to load in all that software. And this is like the modern version. Computers come preloaded with stuff, and they're ready to run. So, the main distinction is between these two groups. You can have a priori knowledge about the world, pure reason. These guys say that's BS. Whatever you know what's out there comes from the senses, gets into the mind. Rationalists often accept innate ideas, the stuff built in there, and empiricists say that is also BS. Now, in terms of why this is important, again, one thing is methodology. Could you do physics, for example, just doing equations and prove the existence of like parallel worlds or other dimensions? Or do you actually have to go and get empirical evidence? Secondly, in regard to the innate ideas or tabula rasa, there are important questions like what's built in? And like, to use a concrete example, take like racism. Is racism built in as an innate idea? Do we have like a racist module put in there? Or is it something we have to pick up from the outside? And it does matter, because if stuff is built into us, then it's part of our nature. It's just in there. If we have to learn it, then we can teach people to not be that. Or better, never teach them to be that way. So it's an important question of what's innate and what is learned. Everyone's probably heard the nature-nurture debate, and this is what it kind of boils down to. What's in us by nature, what is acquired by nurture. Okay, so that's the historical background. Before heading to arguments, anything about the background that needs more stuff? Yes, the importance of the background was to set the stage for the dead guys we're looking at. So when I say things like empiricism or materialism, it'll hopefully make some type of sense. And if it doesn't, just always ask. Now, the way that philosophy is done, at least Western-wise, is by arguing. Now, if a friend of yours texts you saying they just had an argument with their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, or girlfriends or boyfriends, I don't judge, then what do they probably mean? An argument is a disagreement, fight, dispute, battle. Now that's the informal usage. And not surprisingly, just like in other fields, we take normal everyday terms like work, for example, or sell, and we define them technically. So the term work means one thing in everyday life, another in physics. The term cell means one thing in, say, everyday life, another thing in cellular biology. Likewise, argument means something different in philosophy. And here's the idea. In philosophy, an argument is a set of claims. And a claim is something that is either true or false. And claims can range from very mundane things, like this is a water bottle, to claims that are more controversial, such as Donald Trump should be president. And they're both claims. Because, in this case, this one is true, and that Trump should be president, well, it depends on what you think about the document. Now, just a set of claims, though, doesn't make an argument, because you could just have a random set of claims, like this is an expo marker, this is purple, today is Tuesday. And they're all claims, but you wouldn't say that's an argument, because they're just like, you wouldn't say, like, if you had a bowl, like with an egg, some flour, and some yeast just laying there, you wouldn't say, oh, that's bread. True, it contains the stuff you need for bread, but if it's just sitting there all separate, it's not bread. Likewise, just as you've got some claims, you haven't got an argument necessarily. So what do you need? Well, an argument is a set of claims, the parts of which serve two distinct functions. So you have two types of claims. One is the conclusion. And every argument has one and only one conclusion. If you ever saw the bad 1980s movie Highlander, their tagline was, there can be only one. I'm sure it's on Netflix. So if you want to waste your life, you can go and watch that. Or you can watch 2 or 3, which were even worse. Remember, once you see something, you cannot unsee it. So always choose wisely. Now, a conclusion is this. It is the point that is being argued for. It is what is trying to be established, what is trying to be proven. It answers the question, what's the point? So if you're trying to find an argument, you would ask the question, what's the point? And if there is a point, that would be potentially your conclusion. Now, a person could have a point, of course, but no argument. So if someone says, Bernie Sanders should be president, they've got a point, but of course, if that's all they say, not an argument. So what do you need to transform a point to an argument? Well, what you need is reasons or evidence. And that is called the premise. Or if you have more than one, premises. Now, you can only have one conclusion per argument, but premises are unlimited. You can have one to infinity and beyond. So, an argument consists of a conclusion, one, the point being argued for, and you have the evidence or reasons, the premises that are offered in support. So the conclusion answers the question, what's the point? The premises answer the question, what evidence is there for that point? Why should this be accepted as true? Now, arguments, as we'll see, split into three main flavors. The inductive, the deductive, and the third flavor is the bad, namely the fallacy. Now we'll see just a teeny bit about each of these, but here's the idea. Inductive arguments deal in probability rather than certainty. For example, talking about politics, polls are inductive arguments because they're going from what we've observed to what we haven't observed. For example, who's the leading Republican candidate right now? Yeah, how do we know that? Yeah, polls and surveys. So what we do, we've got all the, I guess, Republican primary voters who answer the, potential ones. They pull out a sample, and they find in the sample, I think Trump is at like, say, 43%. And it's an inductive argument, because we say, well, 43% of those polled say they vote for Trump, therefore 33% of the primary voters, plus or minus, whatever the margin of error is, would vote for Trump. Now, could that 43% be off? Yes. Yeah, it could be off by quite a bit, because it's inductive reasoning. Now, deductive reasoning, we'll see a bit more about this. Deductive arguments deal in certainty. An inductive argument says to you, hi there, I'm inductive. You give me truth, and if I'm doing what I'm supposed to, I'll probably give you truth back. It's like a reliable friend. If they're supposed to take you to the airport for spring break, they'll probably be there. But things could go wrong, because something can always go wrong. Deductive arguments offer you certainty. It's like someone saying to you, you can always count on me. I will never let you down. Now, the difference between deductive arguments and people is, deductive arguments, sometimes that's actually true. That if they're doing what they're supposed to, they will always give you truth. You give them truth, they'll always give you truth back. They are the perfect arguments. The fallacies are bad arguments. Do not trust them. Because they are. Oh, literally fallacy means a defective argument. Bad logic. It's an argument such that the premises do not adequately support the conclusion. Bad logic. Now, since this is not a logic course, we'll just be getting like a tiny smidgen. I kind of like that word, smidgen. Sounds weird. But we'll just get a little bit of logic, just enough to do the paper, make sense of the rest of the course. But if you want to see more logic, and who doesn't want more logic, there's a logic course and the critical inquiry class, which are full of fun and exciting logic. Now, the paper, we'll talk more about the paper later on, what you'll be doing is basically a couple things. One is assessing the quality of the arguments put forth by our good dead friend Descartes, and also arguing yourself. So, in order to do the paper, in order to do the rest of the course, to look at the philosophers, you got to be able to tell good arguments from bad arguments. So how do you assess an argument? Well, fortunately, there are two key questions for any argument. One question is this. Is the reasoning good or bad? And so this is a question about the logic. The second question is, are the premises true or not? That's a question about the content, the quality. Now, these two questions correspond to two important distinctions. Which are these? When it comes to an argument, there are basically two ways things can go bad, two ways things can go right. One area is the reasoning, the logic. If the logic is bad, it's what's known as a fallacy, bad reasoning. If the premises are not true, if a premise is not true, then it is a factual error. It's getting the facts wrong. To illustrate, a fallacy would be something like this. Suppose somebody, well, take a classic fallacy, which is the ad hominem, which involves just attacking a person and then rejecting the person's claim because of some irrelevant perceived defect in the person. So suppose somebody says something like this. Donald Trump says that immigration is a problem, but Donald's kind of a jerk, so he's wrong. Now, is that a good argument? Can jerks be right about stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be like saying, you know, Donald Trump says 2 + 2 is 4, but you know, he's a jerk, so he's wrong. Well, that's clearly, you know, a fallacy. Now, a factual error is being wrong about the facts. So if someone says that thousands of you know, Muslim Americans were cheering on 9/11 after the attacks, that'd be a factual error, something that's simply not true. So this is bad logic. This is just something that's not true. So when assessing an argument, there are those two key questions. Is the reasoning good, which is a matter of logic? And the second is the stuff being said true or not? And they're two separate things. Because I can say things that are all true, and the reasoning could be awful. For example, I could say, premise 1, this is an expo marker. Premise 2, my shirt is purple. Conclusion, Donald Trump should be president. I said, or Donald Trump is running for president, so I need to say 3 true things. So we've got, you know, 3 true things being said, but is that good reasoning? No, because there's no connection. Or if I said, this is an expo marker, today is Tuesday, Bernie Sanders is running for president. All true, but no connection. So, yeah, everything I said is true, but the reasoning is not there. As a final illustration, I'll offer 2 crappy analogies. First one is this. Assessing arguments is like assessing construction. How so? Well, if you look at, say, this building, generally speaking, there's 2 sort of things that can go wrong or right, very broadly speaking. One is defects or goodness in the material. If a building is built out of, say, substandard concrete or substandard steel or uses defective wiring, even if it's put together really well, there would still be a problem. So if you have, this would be analogous to the premises. So this is the building material. So a building well assembled from crappy material, whatever problem. Now the second thing is the way it's put together. So a building could go bad or be good by how well it's constructed. And that's like the reasoning. So this is like, going with the analogy, this is like the building material. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it concrete, quality concrete, or defective, crumbly concrete? In the case of the reasoning, that's like the way it's put together. Is the building well assembled or shoddily assembled? Second analogy, cooking. Now in general, speaking very, very broadly, what are the 2 ways a meal can go bad or go good? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, this way can go bad is the taste.
Yeah, which could be a function of the ingredients. Suppose all you have to work with is 2 slugs, some dirt, and symptomians. No matter how you put that together, it's probably not going to be very, very good. Yeah, so you can have lousy ingredients, like the bad premises. The second factor is how it's put together, because someone could have very good ingredients. You give them, fine, fresh vegetables, some lobster, and they could burn the hell out of it, or do something awful to it. There's some people who can burn water, as they say. No, well, actually, yeah, technically you can burn water, it just has to be hot enough. It is, as a great person once said, you can burn anything, if it's hot enough. I think that was Bernie Sanders. This is why I don't do comedy. That's why. So in the case of cooking, that's the way too that they can go bad. You could have bad ingredients, or put together badly. And of course you could have like double bad or double good. You could have really good ingredients put together very well. Or you could have really bad ingredients put together very badly. Or you could have bad ingredients put together well, or good ingredients put together badly. Arguments kind of work the same way. So a fallacy would be like bad cooking, and factual error would be like bad ingredients. Okay, so that's the basics of how to tell if an argument is good or bad. So when doing the paper, you'll be doing two things in regards to arguments. One is assessing Descartes' arguments to see if his reasoning is good and see if his claims are true. Secondly, you'll be building your own arguments, and you'll want to have good reasoning and plausible premises. So how do you tell if you got good reasoning? Well, there is, an entire course, critical inquiry, and another entire course, logic, dedicated to this, both of these. But since we've only got, a few minutes, basically the way to tell is this. As a matter of logic, you would inquire, do my premises logically support my conclusion? Do my premises connect? And we'll look at some of the good arguments, and we've talked about, when we talk about some particular arguments, we'll see what is a good one and what is a bad one. Now, in terms of the premises being true, basically there are three intuitive standards. What is this? Firstly, does the claim match your own observations? Now, our observations are not perfectly reliable, because sometimes we see what is not true, but that's an initial test. Does it match your own observations? Secondly, does it match your background information? So if someone says, for example, that polar bears are native to Florida, you know that that's not true, because your background information tells you polar bears live in polar places, or what used to be polar places. Thirdly, how well do the claims match credible sources? So one way to test is to basically look at excuse me, a credible source, checking against like potentially the Wikipedia or other credible sources. So that's the sort of generic assessment of arguments. Now, as I mentioned, there are two main flavors of arguments: deductive and inductive. Here's the definition of deductive argument. A deductive argument is such that it claims, purports, that if all the premises are true, that the conclusion must be true. Going back to my illustration, if a deductive argument was a person, he would say to you, hey there, I'm a deductive argument. You can trust me absolutely. If you give me truth, I'll always give you truth back. Now, these are used in cases because they promise certainty. They're used in cases where you need certainty. Now, these are relevant for a couple reasons. One is, of course, if you take a philosophy class, it's good to know about the basics of logic, in case you don't take any logic course. Secondly, it's also important because, as we'll see, when we talk about the perfect philosophical method, people like Descartes and others, they tried to solve all the philosophical problems deductively. Why? Well, here's why. Deductive arguments that are doing what they're supposed to have a very special feature, which is is this. So if you get an argument and you know it's deductive, then the next question is it good reasoning or not? If the reasoning is good, it's valid, which just means this. A valid argument is such that if all the premises were true, then the conclusion must be true. 100% guaranteed. And I'll use two illustrations to show that. One is this. Tax time, coming up soon. W-2's coming out soon, taxes due in April. And many people do their taxes with programs like TurboTax or H&R Block. Now, when you're using tax software, you want it to do what? If you put in the correct information, what do you want guaranteed to get out at the end?
Most benefit.
Well, yeah, ideally you want to get the most money, but you want it to be accurate. So you want it to be such that if you put in truth, like this is how much I made, that you're guaranteed truth. You don't have to worry like the program's going to get things wrong. And so a valid tax program is such that if you put in true information, you get the right result. And a valid argument is the same thing. A valid argument is you put in truth, you're guaranteed truth out. For example, one example would be this. If today is Tuesday, then tomorrow is Wednesday, premise 1. Premise 2, today is Tuesday. Conclusion, tomorrow is Wednesday. Now, if today is Tuesday, and Wednesday follows Tuesday, what is the probability that tomorrow is Wednesday? 100%. Can't be, assuming that's all true, can't be wrong. So that'd be a valid argument. It's perfect reasoning, infallible. Put in truth, truth comes in. Now, unfortunately, they can also be invalid arguments. An invalid argument is such that if you put in truth, you're not guaranteed truth out. To illustrate, going with the tax software, it'd be like buggy tax software, like bargain tax. You put in, they say, hey, we're cheaper, but we don't guarantee. You put in all true stuff, you may get the right answer, you may not. Now, which should you pick for your taxes? The one that guarantees, or the one that says, we may get it? They guarantee. Another illustration, suppose you track your bank account with an Excel spreadsheet, or you're doing an Excel spreadsheet for a class, doing the formulas and stuff. If you have it set up so that it actually does what it's supposed to, it's like a valid argument. You put in the correct numbers, it gives you the correct answer. An invalid one is like a defective spreadsheet. You can put in all the right information, but there's a problem with the formula or formulas. So you put in all true stuff, you may get the right answer, you may not. Now, one thing that often is a bit confusing about valid and invalid is this. Valid just promises, you give me truth, I give you truth back. It doesn't make any promises about if you give it non-truth. Likewise, invalid doesn't say, hey, I'm invalid, I give you false stuff. Invalid is, hey, I'm unreliable. You give me truth, who knows what we're going to give you. So you could have an argument that's valid in which everything is not true. What would be an example? Well, let's take the Tuesday argument. That's good reasoning. But on Wednesday is Wednesday Tuesday? No. So if I give the argument on, I can use the my Monday argument. If today is Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday. Today is Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday. Now, is that good reasoning? Well, if Monday is followed by Tuesday, and today is Monday, what would tomorrow be?
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. So the reasoning is good. The problem, though, is, of course, it's not Monday. So good reasoning, it just happens to be not a true premise. So the reasoning is still good, but the claim is false. So we can have good reasoning about stuff that's not true. For example, suppose you're in a class and you've been assigned to create an Excel spreadsheet that calculates interest on, in a bank account. In order to do that assignment, do you need to go and create a bank account for real, put in that money, and then type in the numbers? No, you can just make up the thing. And you can tell whether it works or not based on not is it actually true, but if it were true, would that result be correct? So you could just put in information that's not true. But the promise of validity is if you do put in truth, you get out truth. If you put in stuff that's not true, who knows? But if it were true, which is why the Monday argument is good reasoning, but not every day is Monday. So it's not always true premises. Now, invalid doesn't mean that the stuff in there is false. For example, take the following argument. If Tallahassee is the capital of Florida, then it's going to be in Florida. True? Yeah. Tallahassee is in Florida, therefore Tallahassee is the capital. Everything I said is true. But is that good reasoning? No, because we can take the following similar argument. If Sogchoppy is the capital of Florida, then it's got to be in Florida. Totally true. Sogchoppy is in Florida, therefore it's a capital. Not true. Not until after the zombie apocalypse. Then Sogchoppy is the... Oh, I said too much. I said too much. Forget what I just said. But move to Sogchoppy when the zombies show up. Now suppose you have an argument that is valid and really does have all true premises. Well, that's called sound. And sound is the platinum standard. No, diamond standard. No, diamond platinum standard. Is that a thing? It's diamond platinum. It's the Latin. It's the greatest thing there is. Now the reason why this is so awesome is because if you knew an argument was sound, you would know that it was valid, and you know that all the premises were true. So you would know with absolute certainty that the conclusion is true. For example, my Tuesday argument is valid every day of the week, but it's only sound on Tuesday, because only Tuesday is Tuesday. It's valid on Monday, Sunday, Wednesday, but only sound on Tuesday, because only Tuesday is Tuesday. But if you know an argument is sound, again, that's perfect. You would know the conclusion is true. Now, tying this back to the perfect method, what thinkers like Descartes wanted to do was this. If you could find something that is known with certainty to be true, an undoubtable claim, and his is, the one he's, a bit of a spoiler, is, I think I am. So his undoubtable claim is that he exists. And what he wants to do is take claims that cannot be doubted, that are absolutely certainly true, and then build a deductive argument. Because if you built a deductive argument that's valid, and all your premises are true, your conclusion is true. You get a new truth. Then you take that truth, put it into a deductive argument with other truths, and you get more truth. And Descartes believed that through deduction, through sound arguments, he could prove everything with certainty. And so that's why deductive arguments are important, because if you could make this work, you could, like bootstrap. You get one truth, or at least starting truth, get a deductive argument that's valid, load in that truth, you get more truth. And you keep doing that, and you can build a structure of guaranteed truth, which would be pretty cool. Now, if you have an argument that's valid, but the premises are not all true, then it's unsound, by definition. Now, validity is eternal. If an argument is valid, it was valid before the beginning of time, which makes no sense, and it'll be valid after the end of time, which also makes no sense, but it's valid forever. Soundness, though, as we saw, can vary from day of the week to the day of the week. My Tuesday argument is only valid on Tuesdays, but it's only sound on Tuesdays, but it's always valid. And some arguments may be sound only for a second, but always, if they're valid, they're always valid. But soundness is depends on the scenario. So valid plus truth gives you sound. Valid plus one or more untrue premises, unsound. Now, invalid arguments, by definition, always unsound. So, if you know an argument is sound, you know a lot about it. You know that all the premises are true, you know it's valid, you know the conclusion is true, you know it's deductive, you know it's an argument. If an argument is unsound, you know some possible things. You know it may be invalid, but it may be valid. It may have one or more false premises, or it may not. It is an argument, but doesn't tell you a whole bunch. Now, I included in the notes many examples of standard deductive arguments. Do you have to know those? The answer is no, which is always a good answer in that case. But I include them so if you wish to gaze upon them, you can gaze upon them. So what are the main things to take away from this? Well, the primary thing is, knowing deductive arguments. That way, if you never take a critical thinking or logic class, you will at least, if someone talks about deduction later in life, you'll say, hey, I had a class on that. And more importantly, when you talk about the perfect method in deductive reasoning, you'll know what is meant by that. Now, what about the paper itself in most arguments? Well, this will be primarily inductive. So what's the difference? But before going to that, anything about any of the deductive stuff that needs more stuff?
What is
Oh, something I tend to skip over for the sake of time, but I shall now turn to it. A reductio ad absurdum is an argument of this type. It is when you prove something or disprove something by, well, be a little more correct. Here's the idea. The reductio absurdum has two forms. One form is you want to prove something. You want to prove a claim. We'll call the claim P. Or you want to disprove a claim. So you want to try to establish that it's not true. Now, reductio works like this. If you want to prove a claim, what you do is you assume that it's not true. So if you want to prove that something is true, you assume for the sake of argument that it's not true. Then what you do is you show that that assumption logically leads to an impossibility, an absurdity, or a contradiction. And if you do that, if assuming not P leads to that problem, then not P has to be false, or more simply, the claim is true. Now, if you want to disprove something, you do the opposite. You assume it's true, show that that leads to an absurdity or contradiction, and that shows that it's not true. For example, centuries ago, when I was in grad school, we were having a debate about the definition of oppression. And someone put forth the definition of oppression is this. It is the mistreatment of a minority by a majority. With a little more complications, but the main thing was minority, majority. Now, of course, there is a certain appeal to it, because many cases of oppression do involve just that. However, we can do a reductio on that. How so? Well, here's how it goes. Percentage-wise, are a woman a minority or majority? Majority. More males are born than females, but more females survive. Why is that? Well, have you ever seen the movie Jackass? Jackass 2, Jackass 3D? Things involving shopping carts and rockets and so forth. As guys, we just like that stuff. Some girls, some women do too, I don't want to be sexist, but guys have a natural love of shopping carts and rockets and things that kill us. So we don't make it. Basically, that's the long and short of it. And so there are actually more women than men, at least in like the United States, for example. And so if oppression is always a minority being mistreated by a majority, that means in the United States, women cannot be oppressed. But is that true? No. So that definition would be shown to be absurd and hence false. So that'd be a reductio. Next time, we'll pick up looking at the inductive stuff. And so next time we'll finish up the introduction to arguments and start with our good dead friend, René Descartes. So, have a good rest of the day, and we'll continue our next exciting episode on Thursday. Sponsored by Coca-Cola and Netflix. No.